First of all, I want to thank you for your time. Hi, I'm Michael Makovsky. I'm the president and CEO of GINSA. I'm honored to have Congressman Jimmy Panetta of California's 19th district join us. Congressman Panetta volunteered for active duty and was deployed in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and was awarded the Bronze Star for meritorious service. We very much appreciate your service, Congressman. He's now in his fifth term in Congress, and I was just talking to him, and it's true that he represents, he'll say the prettiest. I don't know. I don't want to say about other districts, but it certainly ranks among the most beautiful districts. I mean, the coastline of California there, right, Congressman? It is beautiful.
Absolutely. Central Coast all the way down. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can't go to Big Sur now, though, right? Still, is that
Oh, of course you can go. Don't start that rumor. You
Oh,
can
okay,
go,
sorry.
you just can't drive Highway 1 all the way south to basically, San Luis Obispo. That there's a big slide that they're having a hard time with. But you can
Oh,
definitely
okay.
go to Big Sur, and I'd recommend it.
I do too. It's been a while since I've been there. It's probably about 10 years, but boy, it's a beautiful drive there. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, look, thank you very much, Congressman. Look, you uh interesting, maybe a little less pretty in my opinion, because not much is prettier than your district, it's true. But you just came back from the Middle East.
Mhm.
And we thought it would be interesting. First of all, maybe before we get about your trip, well, you could talk about your trip and how they viewed Iran, but I'd like to talk about what we just saw that happened in this 12-day war, what Israel did, what the United States did near the end, and just to get your perspective on that. And I'd love to hear about your trip to the Middle East. And I want to just say before I answer, Congressman Panetta not only been a really great friend of Israel, but a really good friend at GINSA's. And I really appreciate it at a time of polarization. He's really works across the aisle a lot. And there aren't a lot of members on either side of the aisle that like to do that enough. And we really appreciate that, Congressman. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. Thanks for that introduction. And obviously, thanks to GINSA for putting this on and all of the members that are tuning in. I actually ran into somebody today who said, "Oh, I'll catch you on my way to the airport at 3:45." So I appreciate everybody tuning in, and thanks for your support for GINSA. And I want to personally thank GINSA as well. Obviously, being on the central coast of California that stretches all the way from South San Jose to Santa Cruz to Monterey to Cambria down in northern San Luis Obispo County. So yes, a stretch of coastline that I would, in my humble opinion, say the most beautiful congressional district. I'll still say it. It's not like I'm roommates with Josh Gottheimer and Tom Suozzi, and I'm good friends with Mike Lawler as well. And they're bragging about they have the most Jewish people in their district. I have the biggest Jewish delegation. I'll be the first to say I don't. So the fact is that I can reach out to GINSA and have honest, direct conversations. Is basically makes me a better member. So I just want to say thank you for the communications, the relations, and the friendship that we've had, and I appreciate that with you, your staff there at GINSA, but also the members as well. So thank you very much. Exactly, Michael. You were saying we just got back. We had this whole trip planned out. We were going to go to, and it was myself, Brad Schneider, Don Bacon, and Zach Nunn. Truly bipartisan trip put on by the Atlantic Council N7 and the Taupin Foundation to basically talk about the Abraham Accords and where we're going. And it was going to be flying to Saudi Arabia, go to Bahrain, go to UAE, and then go to Israel. Now, we left on the 14th, and as you know, action started on the 13th. So we unfortunately, based on getting the U.S. government involved, which we shouldn't have done. No, don't take that literally, but they wouldn't let us in, and our house ethics unfortunately felt that it was beyond the scope of the agreed trip because we couldn't fly in. Therefore, we had to do what I've done for 3 times since October of 2023, and that's basically go to Jordan and then drive in and then drive back. But that being said, it was a good time to be there, a very good time to be in those Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, obviously Bahrain and UAE, to really kind of hear what's going on in the sense of, I mean, you know how it works in the Middle East. There's a lot of kabuki theater there, especially with some of the leadership. So, they obviously, when you meet with leadership, they obviously give you their top line, but then you can have honest conversations about where they're at. And where they were at on the last week prior to the Saturday mission by the United States was that they were obviously worried about escalation. Being as close as they were in proximity to Iran, they were worried about retaliation and escalation of the conflict, understandably so, especially with some of those, including Bahrain, that has NAVCENT and the Fifth Fleet there. If basically, and that's what they said to us. If Iran attacks the U.S. here in Bahrain, that's an attack on Bahrain. And so that was kind of the sentiment. And, obviously, they made it clear how they felt about some frustrations with Israel. However, what they made clear was not, are they just frustrated with Israel? They were absolutely fearful of a nuclear-armed Iran. Let's make that clear. Absolutely fearful. And they were the first to tell us that in the sense that it was more of a way in which they could demonstrate to us that what was going on in the Middle East with the attack, the operations by Israel, they were actually okay with to a certain extent. Now, they wouldn't flat out say that, but that was the message received. Because they were so fearful of a nuclear-armed Iran, what Israel was doing at that time was something in which they were kind of like this about, which we understood completely. So that was the biggest takeaway that we got from our time in the Middle East. Now, obviously, when we got back, and we got back on I want to say Thursday night, and then Saturday, obviously there was really no sense of what the United States was going to do. The president did a good job, basically not leading on in any way, in my opinion, as to where he was at. He basically said he had 2 weeks, and then next thing you know, you had Saturday afternoon Pacific Coast time in which they carried out the operation. And obviously, I think we all understand that first and foremost, we do not want a nuclear-armed Iran. Okay, let's make that clear. We do not want a nuclear-armed Iran. And I believe that the mission by the United States actually did a very decent job in degrading, at least as far as we have right now with the BDA, but definitely degraded. I wouldn't say destroyed. The president can, and that's his prerogative. I would say degraded based on what I know of where they're at and what's been reported as well. Been degraded and set them back months, if not years. And so I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing, and I commend the mission. I commend the men and possibly women who did that mission, who flew the 36 hours, I think, straight. Is absolutely amazing and says a lot about the United States' ability to carry out those types of necessary attacks. However, I do admit I don't appreciate how it was done. Now, look, I'm a member of the U.S. Congress, so of course I'm going to say that under Article 1, we have the power to declare war. Understanding that under Article 2, the president is the commander-in-chief. And therefore, hundreds of times with that authority throughout the history, at least throughout, I think, throughout the history of the U.S., hundreds of times, the president has done that. I mean, just looking recent history, you had Trump 1.0 and Soleimani, you had Biden with the Houthis, you had Obama with Libya, and even I would say kind of the same category, Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. So, you see that there are the ability, the authority of the president to carry out limited attacks. Now, the issue is, though, on this one, and the issue that I brought up was that it was kind of, yes, it was limited action. We saw that, but I believe there was much higher danger of turning this one into something quite significant and the potential for there being escalation. Now, look, I think I kind of seen, obviously there were the 14 missiles launched to match the 14 bombs that were dropped over to Qatar. But obviously, that was one of these Iranian responses that they just had to do. The fact that they told us ahead of a time, and fortunately, so our missile defenses were up, and so it worked out. But they had to do something, and we all know that that's how Iran acts. And so, fortunately, I think with the frustration of the president, as expressed so articulately the other day going to the helicopter, I think he basically let him have it. And that's why we're at the ceasefire right now. However, I still think that we are at a period of uncertainty. I'm not talking about escalation, although that was a big worry at first, and it still could get to that point, but I think we're okay right there. It's basically, what do we do from here? And I think there's uncertainty, like I said, in regards to the battle damage assessment. We know there was definitely some damage to the centrifuges and to their nuclear capacity. The question is, how destroyed were they? And were some of them removed? And are they hidden right now or stashed away? And that I'm not necessarily. I think the good thing is that although we have excellent, I just came from a briefing put on by JINSA for the four-country caucus. Just a quick digression: four-country caucus is a group of Democrats and Republicans who've all served in the military. And we had General McKenzie, I want to say it was. And he basically said, look, he's like, we got full lucidity on what's going on in Iran. And if it's not the U.S., it's our partners. And if it's not up in the air, it's on the ground. And so I think that's probably true. I think we know that. So hopefully more information will be coming out, not just about the BDA, but if there is any sort of a way that they actually remove the centrifuges, the 400 kilograms of the 60% we're worried about, where's that? And so hopefully that information comes out. We got uncertainty about the regime. Look, I mean, what happens with this thing? I mean, right now it looks like they're holding on, although they're clearly weakened. They're clearly unpopular. They've just got, they have a powerless military. They have weak allies and proxies. And so now more than ever, and I think that's understandable, at least even before the attack, that they're at one of their weakest states that I think we've seen, at least in my history and our history. But I think it was understandable that not only were they weak before the attack, they also were very strong when it came to their nuclear capabilities. And that's something that, to me, why you saw this type of operation very understandable, and that they were a weak country, yet they were continuing to escalate, not escalate, but I guess enrich, I should use the word, enrich on their nuclear capabilities. So it's understandable. But you still don't know what the heck's going to happen with the regime. And then, of course, where are their nuclear desires? I mean, look, I know-how and geology doesn't go away with bombs, unfortunately. And right now, they're probably feeling pretty humiliated and resentful. And the question is do they go it alone? And do they start to make nukes on their own? Do they withdraw from the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty? Do they then basically disallow, which they already have, but just completely refute any sort of attempt by the IAEA to inspect anything? And so that's something else that they could do. And then it's obviously diplomacy. Where is the certainty of diplomacy? Where are we now? Now, look, I firmly believe that President Trump wants this to be done ASAP. He wants this to be over with. I don't think he wants to be in this position, but he is in this position, and the situation is that he just wants it to be done with. Now, I hope, and I think we all hope, that he doesn't just push a deal for deal's sake. That's the last thing we want, to be honest with you. It's going to be difficult, though, because obviously, we have to, worry about a regime that may cling to power. And then we have to worry about a regime that may cling to their nukes, or at least want to. And so what is that going to entail in an agreement? Are we going to have a situation in which we back to 1991 post-Iraq, where the U.S. is very engaged with making sure that this regime does not enrich or have any nuclear capabilities? Is that going to entail no-fly zones, further inspections, other ways to enforce that? Is the U.S. going to be fully involved in that, even though this is an administration that wants to slowly pull out of the Middle East? Now, with these types of things, are they going to have to be doing that? If not, do you then delegate it to Israel to do that? And even if you do that, the United States will still be there. The United States will still be providing what's necessary for Israel to carry out that sort of inspection or kind of constraining missions that they'd have to do. So these are, and then basically beyond Iran, how does it look for the Middle East? I mean, is there an opportunity here in the diplomacy to not just work out something with Iran, but maybe tie in now that Netanyahu is really, to a certain extent, beholden to President Trump, for lack of better words, because President Trump did the military action. I think he's kind of, feels that he's probably, Trump's probably got a lot of sway over Prime Minister Netanyahu. Is this something where we can work in an agreement to stop the war in Gaza and work out a situation there? Or even better, is this something where we can tie in a normalization aspect with Saudi Arabia? Look, either way, at any of those levels, from Iran to the middle, to Gaza, to Saudi Arabia, to the Middle East, it's going to take time. It's going to take, and I heard this today, and I like this word, strategic patience. Yeah. And I think the president has to be ready for that. This administration has to be ready for that, in that there has to be strategic patience in order to get a diplomatic constraint on Iran. But ultimately, there's opportunities here, and I think is how we should look at it, to go beyond Iran and to the Middle East as well, because I do believe that is what we are all looking for ultimately. How we get there, it's going to be very difficult. I think we're slowly plodding along, but I think right now, one of the biggest issues, like I said, is the uncertainty of it all and where we go from here.
Let me ask you, just to take a few things you said. Would you agree, though, that, I mean, you had the German Chancellor Merz said that Israel's doing our dirty work. Now, you don't hear always, and you had the Canadian opposition leader, now admittedly, these are both conservatives, yeah. Said recently it'd be a gift for Israel to take care of the Iranian nukes. And the press has been focused on what Trump did, and, for understandable reason, I personally thought it was a terrific thing. I'm not in the opposition. I don't have political concerns. I just think what Trump did was, I commend him for it very much. But people forget Israel really, if this was a baseball game, they were killing the Iranians till the ninth, and, the U.S. came in the ninth inning to close it out. Would you agree that what Israel did was, a gift for us? Because you had 5 presidents in a row, Democrats and Republicans, say that, we're not going to allow a nuclear Iran. And let's face it, the Israelis really did most of the work, not to take anything away from what President Trump ordered and the U.S. military did. But the Israelis, as you pointed out, humiliated the Iranians, destroyed so much of their military leadership, did a lot on the nuclear facilities before, on the ballistic missiles. And then the U.S. came in to do what the Israelis could not do as well. So anyway, I'm just curious, what do you do?
Yeah, no, look, I think you have to look at how Israel is feeling right now, and more importantly, how Prime Minister Netanyahu is feeling right now. I mean, this is a legacy-defining victory. I mean, seriously, it really is. I mean, not just with this, but then going backwards from here. Wiping out Hamas, decapitating Hezbollah, still pushing back pretty strong on the Houthis, which I'm still worried about, to be honest with you, and where they can play going forward. But still, I think they were able to push back on them. And then basically, realizing, like I said, how weak the regime is right now, yet also having the intelligence to basically prove that they're at their strongest they've ever been when it comes to nuclear enrichment, with the 60% levels that they have and the 400 kilograms that they had as well. So I think this is something where you have to acknowledge that basically, because like I said, first and foremost, you do not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, that this operation by Israel, combined with the United States, has set them back in that goal. And that's something that we should appreciate.
Yeah. And I won't push on this too much, but I'll just raise, when President Trump did this, you had Senator Fetterman, who feels unencumbered, I think, by the constraints of either party. And he was very supportive. By the way, it's been interesting before the attack. even before Israel commenced, I would say even Republicans mostly seemed to want to stay within the bounds publicly of where the White House was. I think privately they were communicating what they thought to Trump, but publicly they stayed in line. But all these presidents said they prevent a nuclear Iran. Trump stepped in really and did some, and he had people in his own base saying, "Oh, it's going to lead to World War III." Tucker Carlson made all these outrageous predictions that turned out not to be remotely true, and he defied all that actually and went in. I thought it showed guts on his part. Do you
Look,
agree?
it was absolute. Look, I think in that line of work, when you're in that position, you have
Yeah,
to take risks, and
yeah,
this was a risky move. Okay, let's be clear about it. It was a risky move, and as risky as it was, obviously it turned out the way it was.
yeah,
And I think that's appropriate. But look, you also got to realize that it wasn't just Fetterman. I get my roommate Josh Gottheimer. His statement
yeah.
was
Sorry.
pretty
No, I agree. I didn't mean to. You're right. You're right.
commending of the president. But like I said,
Yeah,
there are different reactions by different members based on their constituencies. I
yeah,
represent the
yeah.
19th congressional district, and obviously, based on my support for Israel, I'll be honest with you, I get the crap kicked out of me by my constituency. I just had an op-ed published last weekend about how I'm not doing enough in Gaza and how I should be primaried. I mean, this is kind of what we deal with. But the fact is that I based on my education, based on my 7 visits to Israel, numerous more than that to the region. I basically have a good understanding of why it's important to continue to support Israel and continue to support their self-defense and continue to basically support a strong United States-Israel relationship. But at the same time, like I said, I am a member of the United States House of Representatives, and anytime that the president feels a need to carry out this type of military action, I want to make sure that we at least have some say based on our Article 1 authority to ensure that basically we're right there at the table as well, with the knowledge and the background that under Article 2, the president, as a commander-in-chief, can deploy troops if there is an immediate threat, if there is a threat.
Well, if it doesn't get you in trouble, again, I want to thank you for all your support for Israel and that you reach across the aisle as often as you do on
And I
serious
think, and
security
Michael,
issues.
let me remind people that's as you look at the votes that the House of Representatives had to take when it comes to our support for Israel, be it the Iron Dome or be it the supplemental, overwhelmingly bipartisan. Overwhelmingly bipartisan. And I think, unfortunately, with what you see on TV and some of the people that speak out in the Democratic Party and what they say, people forget that this is a very bipartisan issue when it comes to the support for Israel, especially in the United States Congress.
Yeah. Um, I won't ask you about domestic politics. I'll just stick to the foreign affairs on this one. But let me just ask you just on the Iran issue, because that is the issue today. And you mentioned Gaza, we could talk about that. But just on the Iran issue, what do you think President Trump, what do we need to do? You mentioned you raised questions. Are there no-fly zones of verification? Do we need to, how should we engage the Iranians to make sure they don't reconstitute? And you raise good questions. What about some of that enriched uranium? We need to find out about that if that's really a problem. Do they have centrifuges left? Those are all good questions. So how do you think we need to make sure that they don't, reconstitute their program and
Yeah,
go?
I mean, look, I think as I heard from General McKenzie and as I'm
He's a
reiterating.
fellow with us, by
Yeah,
the
exactly, exactly. I mean,
way.
he was spot on. I mean, we have eyes there. We have eyes
Yeah,
inside of Iran,
yeah,
physically and literally and figuratively. And so I think we have to basically ensure that we have more of those, especially now, to ensure that we have that monitoring system in place, be it covert or not. And so I think that's first and foremost what we have to do. Two, then we have to start, well, look, this is part of the diplomatic solution to ensure that the desire to have a nuclear weapon is constrained and restricted and monitored and verified. And so it's not just getting the agreement, it's what type of verification systems do we have? And if so, who's going to do that? I mean, there are a lot of questions that I think need to work out that I just don't see it happening anytime soon. And as Mackenzie said today, the Iranians are better at negotiations than us, which I was surprised to hear from the general. But I think that's kind of understandable
Yeah,
considering
no, they're good.
how they've been playing it out. So, and obviously with the attack on with the mission on Saturday, we kind of took away one of their cards by doing that, and I think that kind of made it a little bit easier to have some fruitful negotiations going forward in trying to answer one of those questions about the nuclear enrichment capabilities. However, we still got to confirm that, and we got to monitor that, and we definitely got to verify it, and that's all got to be part of these very difficult discussions coming up here. I mean, these types of negotiations, they aren't easy, and as much as the president wants it to be over now, and I get it, I don't see it anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's going to have to take that sort of a political will. And like I said, I like those words, strategic patience
Yeah.
on this one to get that type of agreement.
Well, President Trump is known for his patience. So let me ask you one more thing. I know I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you have limited time. So you brought up your briefing with John McKenzie. One of the things he wrote a paper, it's on our website for us that we issued. He did in September, was about El Udeid. And I want to tie it into your trip because El Udeid is a air base in Qatar, and the United States it's a premier air base. The U.S. has used it a lot, but General McKenzie wrote this back in September. He says we have to reimagine our basing because El Udeid, we have these bases, our bases in the region are kind of relics of the Cold War. And if we have a conflict with Iran, El Udeid is going to be very vulnerable. And we should think about having bases farther away, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and so on. And what did we see right beforehand? We evacuated a lot of our planes and personnel from El Udeid. The Iranians attacked El Udeid. No, thank God, no one was hurt. But it confirmed what General McKenzie said. And so my question is, from your trip also, if you heard anything about Qatar, and if you agree that maybe we have to think about, because one of the reasons that there are a number of reasons America has been so friendly with Qatar, and we've been, I should say, Jens has been much more critical of Qatar, is this I view that El Udeid is so important. Well, actually, we say, and we've argued, and John McKenzie indicated, says it's actually a vulnerability. And we have to rethink how many troops we have there. So I'm curious what you've, sorry for that long introduction, but I wanted to explain it to the audience, what you think about Qatar and that El Udeid, and if you heard anything about Qatar on your trip, and about.
Yeah. First and foremost, look, I think we can always be looking at repositioning when necessary, our military assets in the region. But at the same time, it's balancing out with where we can go and what we have there. I've been to Al Udeid. I've seen how beneficial it is, strategic location, where it's at. And so it's obviously important. And then whether or not there can be another place that can replace that is obviously something we should always be mindful of and taking into account the cost benefit analysis of it. And what part of the cost is the threats to our men and women in uniform there on that base. But then going beyond that, it's just making sure that if we're worried about Iran, then let's make sure that we not only basically in this type of diplomacy are worried not just about their nuclear enrichment, their missile capabilities, their proxies. That has got to be a part of any sort of agreement that basically the president and his team are negotiating. We have to constrain them. It's something we didn't do in JCPO.
Right.
JCPOA is one of the biggest knocks against JCPOA. And so let's learn from our mistakes and make sure that if there is a diplomatic agreement, it prevents, it basically restricts and limits any sort of ability to strike air bases like that with their missiles or their proxies. And so I think that's part of it. Now, to your other question about whether or not we heard about Qatar, absolutely. Obviously, you know, Qatar is the type of country that really wants to be friends with everybody. We know that for better and for worse. And that includes the United States. Okay. So it's kind of balancing that out and obviously keeping pressure on them. I was honored to travel last time to Qatar back in January of 2024, and with Senator Ernst, and all of us kind of were, you know, the fact that we were able to travel there, have the relationships that we do there, basically meant that we're able to get in their butts a little bit about basically everything they are doing to put pressure on them to do more when it came to the hostages, to do more when it came to the news organization that's based there, Al Jazeera, to basically constrain them and basically put the limits on what they're showing, considering how the rhetoric, the horrible rhetoric, the biased rhetoric that's constantly
anti-American, anti-Israel.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, the fact is that since we have relations with them, we need to use a relationship with ships with them, not just to benefit us, but to make sure they do the right thing as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, look, I don't want to take up any time. I'll leave it. You've been kind. I was told we had a half hour. We went over that. If you have any concluding remarks you want to add, otherwise.
Look, no, I appreciate it once again. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate this opportunity, and I want to thank JINSA for being present, not just virtually, but physically here in Washington, D.C., and making sure that you continue to reach out to members of Congress, continue to educate members of Congress, continue to educate the public. This is going to be complicated going forward, and you know, as I hear from my constituents, they want us to pull stakes, and I just don't know if this is something you can't do now. It's too volatile of a situation, and there's too much opportunity right now in the Middle East for prosperity, for peace, considering what was done by Israel, by the United States. This is something where I think you need to look at it as a time for opportunity to get what we need in order to make sure that everybody in the Middle East, especially Israel, is safe. So I think like that's how we need to look at this. But like I said, it's going to take will, a lot of it. It's going to take patience, and it's going to take diplomacy. And hopefully all sides understand that, and that includes advocacy from JINSA as well.
Well, thank you. Well, look, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for working with us on our work on the Abraham Accords. I know you're in the Abraham Accords Caucus, and our work on regional security and bringing the Arabs and the Israelis together, which we've seen what the fruits of in this conflict and in the other Iranian attacks on Israel last year, where you had the Israel working with Arab militaries and American militaries. Of course, moving Israel to CENTCOM's air responsibility, which was something JINSA was pushing since 2018. I think that President Trump approved in January 2021, I think helped a lot. But anyway, I want to thank you so much again for all your support of Israel, all your support for a strong U.S. presence in the world and in the Middle East. And again, for your reaching across the aisle and working on these issues in a bipartisan fashion. Really appreciate it. We need more.
Right thing to do.
We need more
of
than
Washington.
Thank you very much. Wish you all the best, and look forward. Have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Bye-bye.